I didn't realize that July would start with some big free-to-play titles. I was just at Anime Expo this past week, so there was a lot of catching up to do. There's Endless Zone Zero, Once Human, and also the first Descendant. The first Descendant specifically is a third-person looter shooter with some basic multiplayer features. Similar games to this, I would say, are Destiny and Warframe. I haven't played Warframe, but I may have played Destiny, maybe a small amount. And I have also played other looter shooters such as like Borderlands and Remnant 2. I wouldn't say I was excited for the first Descendant, but I was willing to give it a try. I maxed out one of my characters, and I think I'm pretty far in the story, kind of close to beating it, I think. So I feel like I've played through each main feature of the game extensively in the 30 hours I played. So the real question is, does the first Descendant carve its own spot among other looter shooters? So how is the story of the game? That's a good question. I have no idea. The story is not really interesting, and I'd be very, very surprised if you actually sit there and read every single piece of dialogue shown. I pretty much skipped through everything and turned the voice volume in-game like very low. The parts where they insert piece of dialogue interrupted the flow of the game, and it didn't really feel interesting and important to want to follow along at the expense of not playing. It really felt like a video that you watch on YouTube and that has like an ad break every 5 minutes, and each ad is 3 minutes long. I don't know if the problem was the story being too simple or too convoluted. It was just being told at the wrong time for too long. If they did more show than tell, and also do dialogue like while I'm fighting things, it would be much, much better. But I think for a lot of people, I just disregarded the story and just had the game point where the next monster I need to kill, then ask questions maybe after I beat the game. If Destiny is about fulfilling your space fantasy dreams and Warframe is probably pretending to be like a cool mech warrior, then the first Descendant is looting things as cool anime characters. The main appeal that sets this apart from other looter shooters is that the gameplay loop revolves around your guns and your character. Chances are, when you think of the first Descendant, you think of this character, Bunny, for no obvious reason. And I think the whole roster of characters as of right now are pretty good, and I'm assuming that they have plans for new ones in the future. The graphics, however, could be better in my opinion. It has like that samey, basic-y Unreal Engine feel that all other games that use the Unreal Engine have. For example, the world environment of the first Descendant is very similar to Palworld's world environment. It's not bad using the engine, because honestly it's good, but it feels like when they use the engine's like, I don't know, basic features and not create their own artistic style, it doesn't feel like its own unique game. Like, you can recognize Fortnite from any screenshot because it's very unique and it has its own art style. I'm not saying the first Descendant is bad because it's using UE5. What I am saying is that it doesn't stand out among other games despite the graphics itself being decent. As it is with any looter shooters, the main objective really is to get stronger, and you get stronger by shooting things and looting things. The main thing that is very important in every shooter is if the actual shooting and killing things feel great. And honestly, the first Descendant passes the test. I still feel like Destiny and Borderlands does it better, especially with the abilities, but it's decent enough to where I could do it for hours on end. I do wish there was better feedback when taking damage, because there would be times when I thought I was good on HP, but then I fall over and die, then I see my HP bar get depleted. I'm not sure if it's intended or lag, or I just flat out have a small HP pool, but I found that frustrating at times, especially during like higher tier activities. So essentially, the feedback and the feeling of shooting your gun and defeating enemies is good, but the feedback on abilities and taking damage could be better, as it just feels like something is missing. To get gear, the easiest way to get them is to go out on the world and complete these world activities to get gears or modules. Think of these activities as a combination of like public events and patrols from Destiny. If the activity hasn't started, you go up to like this node similar to a patrol node and you just start it. Then it starts like a public event equivalent that anyone in the world instance can join. Unfortunately, it seems like there's a cap on the amount of people in a single instance, maybe up to 6, and so there can be times when you're doing these activities alone, which isn't a problem, especially early on in the game. But once you hit the ladder zones and you're either just on level or slightly under level, you're going to need some people to help you with the activities. I honestly think that these patrol activities are implemented very well. It feels seamless in trying to start one, doing one, joining one, or whatever. It also makes the area more lively, which is pretty cool. It just needs to allow more people in a single instance and it'll be perfect. But there could be a small cap because maybe the server load or visual clutter a single person can do negatively impacts like people's performance. Maybe, I don't know, because like it seems like there can be like 100 of people in an instance at the social hub Albion, but like the actual zones can't really hold that much people. On a small note, the movement feels nice. Being able to move around with a grapple hook that refreshes like actually pretty fast is really nice, especially when you pair it with like speedy characters or movement abilities like Bunny. It's great zooming through the battlefield with style and finesse. The enemies and factions are pretty boring and uninspiring. They all felt the same, and I think there were supposed to be like 4 different factions, but I never really noticed since they all kind of look the same and they function the same. When I compare this to Destiny, they have like every distinct enemy faction. They all function differently, makes it feel apparent that you're either fighting the Vex or the Cabal. And since all the enemies feel the same, I don't feel the need to adapt to the situation presented to me. Maybe there's like a shielder that I have to flank, or flying unit that I have to track. And while there is a shielder-like enemy in the first Descendant, I've seen it in like a couple of areas to where it feels like a mini-boss, since encountering it is rare. This can be fixed in a future update where they can just stylistically change / add different motifs for each faction, and just new unique enemy types within each faction, or just flat out add a new faction. Because I mean, I'm like 30 hours into the game, and I don't really know what I'm fighting. The bosses, fortunately, are really good. I do wish the requirements for each boss is a bit clear cut, since gear and character levels aren't a one-to-one comparison, and also when including tons of like small stat modifiers, it's kind of hard to know if you're in the recommended level of fighting it or not. This can be fixed with like a gear score. It just takes like the average like output and input of damage. The bosses are really cool, and it kind of has like that arcadey feel, and you can like shoot out components on the monster to slightly nerf it, or just shoot them as they're also weak spots for damage. The only boss that I truly hate are the bosses with those floating balls. Did the devs actually fight those bosses and thought it was okay? Some of these ball bosses, you just shoot them as fast as you can. Some of them, you have to shoot them in order or else it'll reset. It would be great if they just got rid of that whole mechanic entirely. But otherwise, there's actually a good amount of bosses at launch, and I'm assuming there's going to be more in the near future, which is good. The grind is kind of insane, which makes sense. It is a looter shooter, and it is a free-to-play game. But going for a new character or new legendary weapon requires you to get materials to craft them, and you're going to need a lot of unique materials, which I found annoying. It's a thing that I find in gacha games like Star Rail. To get the materials to ascend and level up this like one character is very different from another character. Why? To waste the player's time. And while I do appreciate the first Descendant shows like the drop chances in-game in the specific activities, it just makes it more apparent to how much you need to grind. To get a 1 of 4 materials for a character, you need to get the material off a loot box. To open the loot box, you need to do one of the boss encounters to open the loot box. And within that loot box, depending on the loot box, it'll be as low as like a 3%, all the way up to 38% of like getting that material that I want. Not too bad on its own, but to acquire some of these loot boxes, you need to do like a patrol-like activity that has an 18% chance of dropping that specific loot box you wanted. So in order to get that material, it's a small chance and a small chance of getting it. So using the numbers I used as an example, to get that material, you essentially have a 0.54% chance of getting that material. That's kind of insane. And that's just one material of 4. But of course you could always spend $10 if you didn't want to do all that anyways. The grind for modules, basically small perks for weapons characters, are better since it's just a singular drop. There's no chance in a chance situation. I think there is a benefit of getting a duplicate module, not sure, but going for a fixed 2.5% chance that's not a chance in a chance makes a lot more sense, especially considering that some of these modules are actually really good, at least on paper. I've done some farming, but I've never been lucky in any type of game. I've lost my 50-50 4 times in a row in Star Rail. But if they made the loot boxes a guaranteed drop in the activity, it would be a lot more enjoyable in trying to acquire these materials to craft these guns and characters. Because honestly, there's a lot, even for a free-to-play game. I read somewhere where they said there were more microtransaction options than actual gameplay features, and honestly, they're kinda right with that. It kind of feels predatory in the things that they're selling here. Character skins, which then breaks down into like backpacks, chest bling, makeup, helmets, and then like the outfits themselves. Grappling hook skins, UI theme, spawn animations, the characters themselves, along with different bundles, a battle pass, consumables, one-time use gear dye, materials needed to level up / upgrade. It basically has every single type of microtransaction known to man in a live service game. It feels predatory, especially when going back to like the 0.54 chance of getting a 1 of 4 materials for a new character. I understand it's free to play, but it just feels very predatory, and it seems like they're pulling out all the stops to get all the money they can get. Thankfully, there isn't any PvP, but still, it makes the grind of getting that 0.54% chance 4 times look stupid when the guy next to you did in 5 seconds by opening his wallet. Like I mentioned before, they should rework the enemy factions to make them more unique both visually and what they do gameplay wise, but they need to get rid of timers in crafting the guns and characters. There's so much friction that a player has to get through when trying to acquire a new legendary weapon or character. The time it takes to farm loot boxes, then open them to get the right materials, but then you have to wait like 16 hours for a character to be crafted. This kind of reminds me of Clash Royale, where they purposely slow progression and create friction in order to guide people to the store and pay money. Even taking microtransactions out of the question, it's just a lot of friction and it makes it feel like a mobile game, especially since I compared this to Clash Royale. Respect to the player's time that went through your horrendous 0.54% drop chance and just give him the character instantly, rather than like waiting another day to actually use it. The first Descendant isn't a bad game, but it's also not a good game. The core gameplay feels nice, grappling around, shooting things, looting things, and fighting all the bosses are really fun. However, this is a very grindy game. To get certain things, you go for a small chance and a small chance. Yes, you can get some things if you just open your wallet and get it instantly, but there are things that you still have to grind for. The story is non-existent, and I'm pretty sure almost everyone just skips through the dialogue. The characters you unlock have some cool abilities that promote different playstyles, and if you look past all the predatory and weird microtransaction options, you can actually get a decent and satisfying core gameplay loop that any person that loves grinding can enjoy. If you don't like grinding to min-max your build and optimize your loadout, or just trying to unlock all the characters and weapons with an absurd drop chance, then this is probably not your game. For me, I still prefer playing Destiny and Borderlands over this, probably because those games are a bit more ability and build focused rather than grinding for a 5 out of 5 gun substat. But like I said, the first Descendant is a decent game, and maybe after a few updates, I can see myself taking this game seriously when they smooth out all the rough edges and really carve its spot among other looter shooters in the genre. But in the meantime, if I really need to scratch that looter shooter itch, I'll probably play the first Descendant for a little bit. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video if you like this type of content, and if you have any suggestions for any game that you want me to play, you can leave a comment down below or come join the Discord in the link below that I'm active in.